He stood at my door like it was nothing, like we were old friends, like this conversation was casual. But the moment I opened it and saw his face, pleasant, hopeful, expectant, I knew something was coming. And I was right. He asked if we could discuss childcare options. Childcare options. For a man I've spoken to maybe a dozen times, a man who moved in 6 months ago with his polite wife, their 2 energetic kids, and a warm smile that always nodded hello, but never stayed long enough to ask how we were. A man whose name I remember because I helped him send his resume to my company when he was job hunting. We've been good neighbors, courteous, friendly even, but close? Not even close. And now, he wanted to talk about childcare arrangements, like we were some kind of communal village, like we were co-parents, like I would casually start handing over my 9-year-old son to people I barely knew. He wasn't pushy about it, at least not outwardly. He framed it like a mutual favor. Said we all work full-time jobs. Said maybe they could have our son occasionally, and maybe we could take theirs. Like a trade, like a balance, like something neighbors do. But all I heard was a request wrapped in obligation. Because here's the truth. We don't need childcare help. We're organized to a fault. Every pickup, every school break, every holiday has been mapped out and secured through October. My son has structure. He has stability. And that took work. So I told him, kindly, firmly, that we were all set. That's kind of you to consider us, I said, but we're genuinely okay. Thanks. I smiled. He nodded, and I closed the door. And then the guilt set in. Not because I regret saying no, but because I started questioning if I'd just been rude, if I'd dismissed him too quickly, if I'd come off cold, or worse, unneighborly. But isn't that how it always starts? With a small favor? A resume passed along, a friendly wave, a casual offer of help, and then, suddenly, you're hosting playdates every weekend, canceling plans because someone needs a favor, juggling kids that aren't yours because you were too polite to say no the first time. This wasn't just about being neighborly. This was about boundaries. And my fear that saying no might have made me look bad was in direct conflict with the reality that saying yes would have made my life worse. Because here's what he doesn't know. He doesn't know that my son is sensitive to chaos. That structure is what keeps him grounded. That random kids in and out of our home throw off his rhythm and his calm. He doesn't know that my partner and I spent years finding the right balance, navigating schedules, late pickups, sick days, school closures, until we finally found a rhythm that worked, one that kept us sane. He doesn't know that our time together is sacred, that weekends aren't just empty hours to fill with favors. They're moments we've earned. He doesn't know us, and yet, he stood there, asking for access to the most precious thing in our lives, our child. Look, I get it. They're new to the neighborhood. They're trying to build their village. They're likely overwhelmed, juggling work, kids, finances. I sympathize. But sympathy doesn't equal sacrifice. And I can't ignore the imbalance in the ask. They have 2 children. We have 1. That alone tells me how this would play out. We'd end up watching their kids more than they watched ours. We'd be the default, the fallback, the ones they called just this once, again and again. And every time, we'd feel torn between protecting our time and protecting a friendship that doesn't really exist. Because that's the danger of saying yes too quickly. You end up in silent negotiations you never agreed to. You end up resenting people you barely know. You end up feeling trapped in your own home, So no, I don't think I was rude. I think I was clear. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes me feel so guilty. Because we live in a culture that tells us to be agreeable, to be friendly, to be the village, to smile and nod and say, of course, even when our insides scream, absolutely not. But being neighborly doesn't mean being a doormat. It doesn't mean compromising your peace for someone else's plan. It doesn't mean letting guilt decide how your family spends its time. I worry sometimes that being honest makes me look harsh, that drawing a line makes me look selfish, that prioritizing our family's needs makes me look unkind. But I've learned, through trial, through error, through burnout and exhaustion, that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness at all. It's erosion. And I'm done eroding. I'm done letting people chip away at the carefully built structure of our life just because I don't want to seem cold. Because I'm not cold. I'm warm. I'm generous. I'm supportive. But I'm not available. Not for favors that cost my time, my energy, or my child's peace. So when I said, we're genuinely okay, what I meant was, we've worked hard to build a life that works for us. And I'm not going to jeopardize that because someone new to the block is already looking for unpaid help. Does that make me an asshole? Because the look on his face, it wasn't angry or disappointed. It was more like surprised. Like he hadn't considered the possibility of no. Like this conversation was supposed to go a different way. And I get that too. It's easy to make assumptions when people seem friendly. It's easy to mistake kindness for access, but I can't be responsible for how others interpret my friendliness. I can only be responsible for what I'm actually willing to give. And this is a line I don't cross. Not for guilt, not for appearances, not for anyone. So, am I the asshole? Because all I did was say no. All I did was protect my time, my energy, and my family's boundaries. All I did was respond with honesty. But somehow, I'm still wondering if I should have done more. If I should have offered alternatives. If I should have softened the no. If I should have delayed it to think it over, even though I knew my answer the moment the words childcare options left his mouth. Because that's what polite people do, right? They delay, they sugarcoat, they compromise, and they regret it later. So maybe what I did wasn't rude. Maybe it was honest, firm, fair. Maybe I said what more of us need to learn to say. No, I can't. No, that doesn't work for us. No, we're good, but thank you. No. So, am I the asshole? Or am I just a person who finally chose her peace over her guilt? You tell me. This story isn't about childcare. It's about boundaries. It's about the quiet weight of guilt we carry for simply protecting our time, for saying no, for choosing our family's rhythm over someone else's expectation. The truth is, kindness and boundaries are not enemies. They are partners. They define one another. Without boundaries, kindness becomes obligation. And without kindness, boundaries become walls. But when you hold both, you build a life that is generous and grounded. You create a space where you can be compassionate without being consumed. So, here's my question for you, listening right now. Have you ever said yes when your whole body was begging you to say no? And what would your life look like if you started choosing your peace first? Comment below. Let's talk. And remember, saying no isn't selfish. It's sacred.